Everyone in this room has probably put down their phone at some point and read an actual comic, read a book, read something new, read an article that wasn't just on their phone. But we are now a minority. Everyone has been infected by their phones. Yeah. And I used to think the very worst superpower in the world would be telepathy. Can you imagine knowing at all times what everyone in this room was thinking? Someone thinking, I've got to fart, am I going to fart? And then someone else thinking, my God, is my armpit smell? I mean, and that is what the internet is. The internet.
Different like turn on buttons. These have 2 buttons. That one has 1.
We even have dark vision.
And I'm Rags Morales. I've been doing this since 1989. I've worked primarily with DC Comics, a number of titles, starting with a TSR book, Forgotten Realms, into Black Condor, into going to Valiant, where I did some Turok work and some Geomancer. And then in 1999, I came back to DC with Our Man, Hawkman, some JSA work, and Identity Crisis with Brad Meltzer. And then after that, I just kind of floated around.
You see a lot of legacy media, supposed legacy trustful sources deciding to distance themselves completely or not speak on some of the First Amendment issues that are coming down the pike.
At least 52% of the people who are purchasing direct market comics, not all the graphic novels, are women, are girls. So it's like, I think your question answers itself. Like, look at the room you're in. Right? Like, we're fighting back. People are fighting back. And if you're using CNN and MSNBC and Fox News to tell you whether people are fighting back or not, you're looking at the wrong sources.
That's right. And it's a bizarre, the story is even more bizarre than you might have imagined. And for all 4 of my major books, I have done the audio books. So if you like this, imagine 14 hours of it popping in your head, available at all your audio places. That's what.
The friendly neighborhood Spider-Man that like I'm seeing, and the Captain America movie as well. And I just wonder what your thoughts are. At first, I was writing a question and trying to think about it, what you thought about it, like what can be done about it. But I wonder what you think that can be done about it from like the audience perspective, as readers or as like consumers, like what we can do to sort of like, I don't know, support or combat or because I just feel like these like the narrative is being captured from people who are comic book fans, right? Where people are challenging, oh well, this isn't the original sort of like characters or storyline or whatever. And not really seeing the reason why many of us came into like the comic book world, just because like we saw something speaking to a part of us that hadn't been spoken to, like as a Black queer man or whatever. It was like, like until I read X-Men, until I read some of these stories, I didn't feel like I was represented. So I guess I'm asking, what would you say to encourage consumers or fans to like, I don't know, deal with this kind of like false narrative about wokeness?
Okay,
yeah.
100 years of movies, what was being represented at that time, and how were the different races being represented during all that time.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what people grew up with. To go and then throw in a black person or a gay person, they're like saying, oh, it's like you're shoving it down their throats, but it's because of all those years before just seeing basically white people, sometimes rich, or even poor.
But you guys have been doing the work, though.
Or fighting World War II, and Japanese people fighting Americans and what you were calling them at the time.
This is Sheldon from Quest Culture Podcast. We're at Cosmic Con. We just had an amazing panel on combating hate, and we have 3 panelists here with us right now.
Raj Morales.
Ann Nocenti.
Keith Williams.
First of all, I wanted to just say to you guys, fantastic panel. The first time I sat in on a panel specifically focusing on hate. Tell us about like your experiences as an artist, color or minority artist, and like what it was like to break into the field. We recently interviewed a young animator who goes to VSA, friend to the show, a friend of my family, and he was talking about his experiences. He's only in his 2nd year VSA, and he was talking about, wanting to be an animator. I guess I want to hear your experiences being in the business for as long as you have been.
I was actually showing my artwork at Marvel. I went to them when they were at 575 Madison Avenue.
What year was this?
Good Lord.
I'm sorry.
This was the 70s.
Okay, wow, okay.
Late 70s. I actually got to show my artwork to Ron Wilson at that time, and he was such a wonderful person because my artwork was horrible. And he, but he really encouraged me to continue doing my work, and got to the point where I actually ended up going up to Marvel almost like every Friday afternoon, visiting the freelance.
Almost like an internship
office.
Unofficially?
Unofficially, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Because the room that they were in was like Rich Buckler, Keith Pollard, Ed Hannigan. These are the guys that were in that office, and I would be able to watch them draw and just fooling around and stuff like that, and I just thought it was like the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah.
When I went back home, it just inspired me more to just continuously draw and just continuously try to get in there, get into Marvel.
What would you tell young artists or young people of color, women, how to break in, especially in considering what we're talking about in the panel with the corporatization of various fields, right? Which I would imagine would make it harder to penetrate.
So I started at Marvel in the 80s when there weren't that many women there, but like Keith was talking about, there was the Marvel bullpen. So you're talking way pre-internet.
Can you tell the audience what the Marvel bullpen
The Marvel bullpen was, whenever you talk pre-internet, you also lump in pre-digital, like people drew by hand. One of my first jobs at Marvel was to do paste up and mechanicals, which was the lettering was written by hand, and then you had to cut the lettering out, and then you had to glue it onto the board.
Wow.
If it wasn't, most of it was lettered right on the board, but if it was a crunch, you had to like cut it out and paste it up. So there was something about that early technology of literally seeing people walking around the Marvel bullpen with like a piece of dialogue stuck on their shirt because they had sat on a chair and stood up with like a thought bubble and a hat, but it was so great because you had John Romita Sr. and Romita's Raiders, where young people could come into the Marvel office, like Keith was saying, on Friday was especially a day, and if you had a portfolio, someone would look at it. And I learned I was Al Milgram's assistant, I was Carl Potts's assistant, so I watched them throw a piece of tracing paper over an artist board and say, okay, you're trying to give a sense of lift here, why are you cutting off the foot? Because that immediately gives you a sense, and why not, you move your camera around and shoot from down below. And I do this to this day in my scripts. I just wrote a Galactus script, and I wrote, in the panel description to the artist, let's use anti-view. Because anti-view, Galactus is huge, let's give him gravitas by how all the angles seem to like warp. He warps the universe around him. So you start getting it into your brain through working with artists, and also it was more like an osmosis. Nobody mentored you officially. You just were in the room listening as someone like John Romita Sr. was going over layouts. Or weirdly, like we had like all our books were up on the wall. Sales, if you did a cover for Marvel Comics that didn't have a fight on it, sales dropped. And it is very hard to have, and we have an artist here with us, two artists here, you guys can talk about that. It's not easy to have two people fighting when you have like, you know, the camera angle. You know, so John Romita Sr. had all these different tricks for how you could have two people fighting and yet facing the camera.
Do the young people today, when you mentor them, I guess, do you teach them in the same way, or do they come in with another skill set or whatever? I mean, I remember spending one summer binding books.
Right? So now it's all YouTube channels. You know? So if you want to talk about, like one of the things we talked about in the panel about like these, we are now at a crisis time legislatively and in the, you know, we're so double down, but don't be overwhelmed. Like one of the things I tell people when I'm teaching is like, don't just feel all the doom scrolling and think you can't do anything. Just do one tiny thing in your personal world. You have a community garden or whatever it is that you can do to, you know, grow extra food for your neighbor. You do anything small is as important, and that is really important for your mental health, is to find a small way you can help your community rather than like watching too much news and thinking the world is ending. You know? So.
Well, I have a question though. I mean, you just said that it was mainly YouTube that young people get inspired by these days. Do you actually mentor people? Do they come to you for advice?
I'm very happy to talk to somebody.
People come to my tables when I'm at conventions.
When you're in conventions, and also like every time I get a check from Marvel for something I do, I go to Kickstarter and I hit invest in, and you know, it's sort of just a thing I do. I'm getting a check from the big corporations, so what I do is I go to Kickstarter. There's a guy out here, Dean Haspiel at the con, who only works through Kickstarter, and it's like I'll invest in Dean's new comic, and then I'll just look around and invest in a couple others if I can tell I like the story. Kickstarter is interesting. It's like you're asking your friends and family to invest in you, and then you grow that slowly, like it becomes then your fans too. That is an interesting way to do an end run around the gatekeepers. So you have to do end runs around the gatekeepers in order to make your art, because the gatekeepers aren't looking for you.